Hey Ascension students, this is Dr. Shell coming to you here. This is a short video about Latin terms that show up in our celebration of Holy Week. We're obviously in the middle of Holy Week since Palm Sunday, and I just wanted to share with you some Latin words and phrases that come up in relationship to this special week in the Christian calendar. And so I'm just going to walk you through those. You want to take some notes to make sure you remember the key words. There is going to be a very short quiz on Google Classroom that you're going to want to take when this is all finished. So just hit the highlights, make sure you have the key words and know what they mean. All right, so I'm recording this on Wednesday. Tomorrow, Thursday, which is when we would normally have had class, would be Maundy Thursday. Maundy is a Latin abbreviation, actually, for mandatum, which, if you see the word mandate is in there, it means a command. Jesus, when he met with his disciples on that for the Last Supper, shared with them a new commandment. He said, I give you this commandment that you love one another. And so his command to us on this Maundy Thursday, we remember it oftentimes with celebrating the Eucharist. Oftentimes churches will meet together and have special services where they remember what the Lord's Supper, this last time that Jesus celebrated with his disciples. And there are lots and lots of artwork relating to the Lord's Supper. Of course, Leonardo da Vinci's famous Last Supper. In here we have a Latin American painter who, again, represents this scene. Interesting note, in many traditions, particularly some independent Baptist churches, they actually have a celebration of foot washing on Maundy Thursday. And so they will meet together, they will have a meal usually, communion, and then they will quite literally wash each other's feet. Sometimes they're called foot washing Baptists. Then after Jesus is arrested out on the Mount of Olives, he is put on trial. It's a bogus trial. First he's tried by a group called the Sanhedrin, then he's tried before Pontius Pilate, then he's sent over to Herod, and then back to Pontius Pilate. And in an attempt to sort of get over all this mess that he's got himself into, Pontius Pilate has Jesus beaten, scourged, in the hopes that that will satisfy the crowd. And then he presents Jesus to the crowd, having been beaten, and he uses the Greek and then Latin phrase "ecce homo," behold the man. So here he is. Here's the guy. I've beaten him, and that should be enough. And then here also you see some artwork that depicts that scene. And again, it's a fairly common scene in various artists have painted of Jesus being presented to the crowd. So next up we have this Latin phrase, the Via Dolorosa. It's Latin for the way of suffering. This is the path that Jesus took from his arrest and trial, crucifixion, and then his burial. You will recognize them as the Stations of the Cross. And so when you go to Jerusalem, and I went there, as you walk around the city of Jerusalem, and many, many pilgrims follow this path, and you will see these signs and different places carving, letting you know that you're on the right route. The individual stations of the cross are marked on the sidewalk, and on the you can see there's a sculpture of it to let you know that you're on that path that Jesus walked on his final day of his life. So the next word that we want to talk about is crucifixion. Of course, this is the reference to the cross in which Jesus was crucified. It initially just meant any cross pieces of wood that were used to hang criminals. Because Jesus died on one, then we kind of talk about the cross, and we mean the particular cross that Jesus was crucified on. It was a particularly horrible way to die. A person who was crucified literally drowned in their as their lungs filled up with fluid because they aren't able to expel air. And the only way they have really to support themselves is by the nails, or if they were tied And so they simply hung there until they were exhausted, and then eventually their lungs would fill up and they would expire. And so Jesus died a terrible death for us. And so again, I have here a painting of a crucifixion. Again, there are thousands of these artists of all different types have painted the crucifixion. This one, to me in particular, shows Jesus in quite a bit of agony, and you can see his bones are disjointed. I think a lot of times it looks like he's sort of taking a nap, and this artist in particular has tried to capture some of the suffering that Jesus went through for us. This next phrase is actually an initialization of the Latin phrase that means Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. That was what Pilate put on Jesus' cross. It was common for them to put something that indicated why people were being crucified. And so above Jesus, it was said that this is Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The religious officials objected to that. They did not want it to say that because they didn't think of him as the King of the Jews. But Pilate basically said, that's what I wrote, and that's what it's going to be. And so really, because as you can see on this crucifix here, it's very hard to write all of those words on a little space. So it is used the abbreviation of INRI to represent Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. And it was also written, it tells us, in Hebrew and Latin and in Greek. But for the sake of artists and trying to write all of that in one place, so it basically they just use the Latin initials to fill in the blanks there. And of course, here we come to the great word resurrection, which means to get back up. And this is, of course, the central piece in the Christian faith, that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, but that he rose again and is alive. So you start with the surgo, which means to get up or rise up, and then you add the re. We know this from doing things again, like rewinding the tape. So Jesus literally stood back up after having been crucified and being laid in the tomb. And this is, of course, the great mystery and the great celebration of Easter. Here's a picture of Jesus' tomb in Jerusalem. I've been there. It's really awesome to see. And of course, the greatest thing about it is what you don't see. When you go there, there's nobody there because he's not here. He's risen. That's what the angels proclaim, and that's what we continue to proclaim, not only on Easter Sunday, but every Sunday that we worship. And unlike many lessons that we get in school, this one demands a response from us. The Kyrie eleison is the Latin reply, Lord have mercy. And when we think about Jesus' arrest, his trial, his being beaten, his crucifixion, his death on the cross for us, and then that he is alive forever, our reaction to that is to say, Lord have mercy on us. And this person is actually prostrating themselves in prayer at the empty tomb of Christ. And so each one of us has the opportunity to ask God for mercy in light of his love for us and his dying on the cross for us. So hope you learned something, and make sure you take the quiz, and you can have your notes right there with you, so it shouldn't take you but just a second to finish the quiz.